What's going on, everyone? Bran here from Bloody Breakdown, and today I'm going to do a first in the history of this channel. I've ranked a lot of franchises, but never ever have I ever re-ranked a franchise. But with the release of Spiral, I believe is it about time that I start doing that, and we're going to start by re-ranking the Saw franchise. So, where does Spiral fall on this re-ranking? Have some films changed since my original ranking? We're going to find that out in just 1 second. But before we do, remember everyone, if you do enjoy today's video, please let me know and let YouTube know by leaving a like, subscribing, turning on notifications, and just for me, if you would check the description section, there's a link to my Twitter as well as my Patreon. So if you'd like to follow me or support the work that I do on this channel, I would be grateful. So enough shilling. Let's go ahead and jump in to my re-ranking of the now 9-film Saw franchise. So first and foremost, this is one of my favorite franchises. I believe that if I had to make like a Mount Rushmore of my favorite horror franchises, you'd see Halloween, you'd see Scream, you'd see Saw, and you'd see Blair Witch. So I guess not a big surprise that this ends up being one of the first ones, or actually the first one that I ever re-rank. So let's jump into it. Like I said at the top of the video, Spiral is going to be placed for the very first time, and there could be some of these entries have moved since my first ranking. That's definitely a possibility. Certain entries in horror franchises for me tend to be a little bit more fluid. See Scream 3 and 4. 1 and 2 is always in first and second place, but 3 and 4, they always seem to skip around a little bit, seem to trade off third and fourth place. So let's go ahead and jump in, folks. 9 films to rank here, starting at the bottom. Let's see if anything's changed, anything's moved. Let's see where Spiral falls. So coming in at number 9, obviously my least favorite in the entire Saw franchise. In my opinion, the weakest. I got to go with 2008's Saw 5. So for me, I'm just going to be honest with you. This was the first Saw film that did not have a satisfactory twist for me. The first film, it's fucking legendary twist at the end of that movie. The second one, the third one, even the fourth one, I thought had really satisfactory twist endings that really had me hooked, waiting to see what they did next year at Halloween. Saw 5 was the first one that did not do that for me. I did not think the twist, and I'll use air quotes for that, was very impressive, was very well executed, well written. I didn't think any of that. This was also the first Saw film that, like, a couple of days after I had seen it, I'd kind of forgotten most of it. And even though things happened in the movie, I didn't really feel like the story had progressed very much. So for me, it's got to be at the bottom of the barrel. It's got to be dead last, a place that I know a lot of people would have given Saw 3D, but I got to tell you, in my book, Saw 5 is way worse than Saw 3D, Saw the Final Chapter, whatever you want to call it. And I will say before I move on, I think maybe it's just me, but I've always kind of felt like the fifth entries in horror franchises, not that they're always the weakest, but I have a general feeling that they are generally weak. I show you Halloween 5, the return, the Revenge of Michael Myers, very weak film. I show you Friday 5. I mean, even though it did have some pretty cool kills on it, at the end of the day, it's not a Jason movie, and there are some issues with it that kind of prevent it from being higher up on that list than I would have originally had it. Also, you think about like The Dream Child. To me, that movie's a disaster. So I've always kind of felt like part fives generally are lacking, which is fingers crossed for January next year when the fifth Scream comes out. I guess we'll see. Anyway, moving on to number 8. It is, other than Spiral, the most recent release in the Saw franchise. I'm talking about 2017's Jigsaw. Wow, what a disappointment. Wow, what a absolute disappointment. So Jigsaw comes, um, a little over a decade, I believe. Well, no, about a decade, I guess I should say. 7 years after the original ending of the franchise where they, had made 7 of these things, pumped 1 out a year, and, it went quiet for 7 years. No Saw films, no, and then we get Jigsaw, and we are promised something different. A total relaunch, a reboot of this franchise. It's still Saw, but it's going to be something different. And in reality, it was more of the same, and unfortunately, it was more of the same of the weaker elements of this franchise, in my opinion. It was the first Saw film that I began to notice timeline issues because and I haven't dug into the timeline and looked at everything with a magnifying glass, but just looking at these films, I believe the first 7, kinda established a somewhat cohesive timeline, and granted, things are a little hectic from time to time, but on the whole, it generally makes sense. Jigsaw was the first one, with the new accomplice's backstory that really muddied the waters for me and started causing problems with the timeline for me. Also, this movie, I don't really think its existence is justified. Like, did this movie really need to exist? I don't think so. I think we'd be fine without it. And I just don't see many merits in this film. There's some cool traps, there's some funny moments, but on the whole, as a Saw film goes, was not a fan. Other than Saw 5, this one was my least favorite, coming in at number 8. So, at number 7, I think one that most people kinda give a middling to fledgling ranking, generally speaking, that's Saw 6. Um, I don't hate it. I don't love it. Um, I like the ending. It was I think the ending, I kinda talked about the ending and the twist for 5. Did 6 really pick back up for me? Kind of. I think it was better. Was it on par with the first 4? No, but it was better, and it, gave me hope. Let's just say that. But there's not really a whole lot to say about this one for me. I dug most of the traps. Um, but it's just middle of the road here for me. It's kind of, not much to say. So I guess I'll say the less said there, the better. Saw 6, it is what it is. It's not awful. It's not great. It's just Saw 6. Whatever. So yeah, speaking of 6, coming in 6th place is gonna be one that a lot of people are probably sitting there already saying, "Why the fuck hasn't he said Saw 3D yet?" Well, here it is, coming in at 6th place on my Saw franchise re-ranking is Saw 3D, Saw the Final Chapter. Go ahead, throw your tomatoes because I didn't put this in 9th place, but I've just gotta say, they wrapped this thing up in a nice, neat little bow that was directly made for the fans of this franchise. You say what you want to about this movie, but this movie was a love letter and a send off to the fans of this franchise that had been there since 2004, with Carrie Ellis, Lawrence Gordon coming back. The ending to the film is one of the most like hype, awesome ass moments in the history of this franchise. So the awesome ending twist element did come back for me personally. Now, it wasn't like the twist was completely shocking, I kinda figured Gordon was a part of it at this point, but just everything coming to one big, culmination, all the storylines and whatnot coming to fruition. I like this movie. I know it's got problems, I know it's not a good movie in general, but as far as this franchise go, it's a love letter to the fans, and whether that's something you want or don't want out of a horror franchise film in its 7th installment, I quite frankly enjoyed it. And that's why, despite its many flaws, and I admit that there are, I put it at number 6. So, coming in at number 5, I want to point out that Spiral still hasn't been mentioned. I want people to notice that. I did quite enjoy Spiral, in case you haven't seen the review. So, coming in at number 5 is Saw 4. This one kind of marked the end of an era for me. The first 4 Saw movies are here in my heart. 5, 6, 3D, they have their problems, but, um, those first 4 are just some of my favorites of all time in the genre, not the franchise, the genre. So I love Saw 4. I thought it was an amazing twist having these things coincide with the events of Saw 3. You're seeing these characters that you were missing if you're a fan of the franchise from Saw 3. I thought it was so well done, an ingenious way to keep Jigsaw in the film alive, technically, through the events of this movie. Um, and that's one thing I have to give the entire franchise is, when you kill your protagonist, or excuse me, your antagonist in the 3rd entry in your franchise, and you end up keeping him, uh, as a viable character, for, several more films. I'd say that's actually pretty well done, so I have to give him a hand there, and it really started with Saw 4 back in 2007. Really enjoyed this film, enjoy the ending, I love the traps, I love the reveal of a new apprentice, seeing characters that we kinda thought went by the wayside after Saw 2. I really enjoyed it. It was, there's a lot of fan service in this one too, even though it's early on. I like it. Number 5, Saw 4. So, here's a moment you may have already been waiting for. Coming in at number 4 is the most recent entry in the Saw franchise, 2021's Spiral from the Book of Saw. So, I guess people were more than likely wanting to see where this one fell if you've clicked on this video, I guess. But I think number 4 is a good place for it right now. Now, granted, I have seen the first 7 Saw films countless amounts of times. I've seen Jigsaw probably maybe 5 times because, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do watch it occasionally. I like the franchise. I've only seen Spiral once. So with that said, I have gone back and I've looked at clips online and I've just kind of did a little bit of a refresher of the film. Um, but overall, I think that number 4 is probably the most appropriate place to put this film at because if you're doing the math, the original Saw trilogy is all we have left. And in my opinion, you're gonna really for me to put the, Spiral above Saw 4 should say something if you get my taste in film. Let's just say that. But I really did enjoy Spiral. I think it is, like I said in my review, fresh but familiar. The fact that we kind of take the franchise in a new direction with its antagonist, but still the same overall MO is there. The fact that, we go and look at this, kind of the way Saw 1 did from the detective standpoint, chasing this unknown killer, not Jigsaw, who everyone knows who it is. But I really enjoyed it. If you and I'm not gonna really spoil anything, I guess, too much in this one, for obvious reasons. But if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Obviously, it's still in theaters. Take whatever precautions you feel are necessary. I hope it's streaming for everyone at home soon. I don't believe it is currently. But yeah, number 4, Spiral from the Book of Saw. That's Saw Yellow Edition. You'll get the joke if you go see the movie. So now we are in the top 3, and like I said, the original Saw trilogy are the only films viable that we haven't already gone over. So coming in at number 3, Saw 2. What an amazing first sequel after the original Saw, because when that movie is over, um, whereas it may seem almost like a given what you should be doing with a sequel, I gotta tell you, they could have went in several other different directions than what they did, and I think they picked a really good direction to go ahead and kick the franchise off in. Because, a lot of times after that first film, if you make a sequel, you can really go a different direction and end up changing an entire franchise. See Friday the 13th Part 2. That actually kicked off Jason Voorhees as the series' antagonist for fucking ever, even though he wasn't even in the first one, but as a child for, a couple of seconds. So, I think they did a great job with it. I love seeing the introduction of Amanda as the first accomplice that we see. I love how they up the ante with the traps, the needles. The needle pit in this film is probably one of the most memorable traps, and it's not even really technically a trap, I guess. Even either that or it's very rudimentary by standards that we see later on and even had kind of seen previously. Sometimes less is more, but I enjoy the movie. Love it. Love going back and seeing that Eric Matthews' son in this movie would later be grow up to be Robbie Mercer from Scream 4. That always blew my mind. But yeah, love Saw 2. That's why it comes in at number 3. So we are now in the top 2. So coming in at number 2 is 2006's Saw 3. It is my favorite sequel in this franchise because I guess if you're doing the math, you know what's number 1. Um, Absolutely my favorite sequel in the franchise. I love how the storyline coalesces. I love how everything melds together. Whether you see it coming, whether you don't, you have to appreciate that at least in my estimation, it's good storytelling. I enjoyed it. Very, interesting twist, very interesting choice to kill your, lead antagonist off, when I guess by this point, they kinda knew they were gonna be making these things for all eternity. But I think it ended up working. Like I said, they did a very good job of, keeping Tobin Bell's character, John Kramer, alive when he wasn't alive. But this is the one where they pulled the trigger on that one, even though, 4 happened simultaneously, which once again, genius. But yeah, Saw 3 is great. Uh, like I said, my favorite sequel out of the bunch. Don't have a bad word to really say about it. It's good stuff. Saw 2, or excuse me, Saw 3 coming in at number 2. So that leaves one film, and that's got to be coming in at number 1, 2004's Saw. And for me, I know a lot of people out there put some of the sequels above it. I've seen the original ranked at third place sometimes. Excuse me, some people even lower. But for me, this movie is, especially the original, I kind of credit it for as one of the movies that kind of helped me take my mind off things at a not so awesome point in my life. So there's some extreme bias behind it. And of course, just the nostalgia overall. I mean, this is the one that started it all. This is a movie that I actually, even as a horror fan, had no interest in going to see in theaters whatsoever. I don't recall too much promotion for this thing. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. But I remember seeing there was a movie called Saw out, and I completely skipped it in the theater. A buddy of mine came over to help cheer me up after, I'm already in said whatever situation, not in a good headspace. He brings over 2 films, Napoleon Dynamite and Saw. And we watched Napoleon Dynamite first, at his behest. And then we followed it up with Saw, and I fell the fucking love with that film and eventually the entire franchise. One of the greatest twists in the history of film at the end. I don't give a fuck who you are. You didn't call it. Don't even come to me with that shit. Um, the creation of a great franchise, the creation of a great film antagonist, Tobin Bell, breaking out as a hidden secret, I would say, of Hollywood. The dude's an amazing actor, and I had no idea who the fuck he was, other than I think I knew him as Chuck Norris's arch nemesis on Walker, Texas Ranger, out of the handful of episodes I watched, because Chuck Norris memes were kind of fire around that point in time. But yeah, this movie's perfect in a lot of ways to me. Don't come at me. I know the acting's not great, but for me, and I know there's a lot of bias and nostalgia involved, this movie's fantastic. It's actually one of my favorite horror films of all time, flaws included. I don't give a fuck. I love it. Um, and yeah, I guess that kind of rounds out my new Saw re-ranking. I know for a fact, there was a little bit of moving around, but I don't think overall there was a whole lot. Uh, of entries that I juggled too much. I think it's very similar to my original. I'll have to go back and check, but I do know with a couple of things juggled around and the addition of Spiral. So yeah, there it is, folks. There it is. That's how I rank these things now. I want to know what you all think in the comment section down below. If you feel up to it, give me your ranking. You can even tell me why you feel the way you feel about each film. I love hearing everyone's rankings about this type of stuff. Love hearing everyone's differing opinions. So yeah, leave me those comments down below. And yeah, we're at the end of the video. So now you know if you like it or not. Let me know. Let YouTube know. Leave a like. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you dig my content, and check the links down below. You'll see one to my Twitter where you can follow me there. I'll probably follow you back if you post a lot about horror. The other link is to my Patreon where you could become like Ral the Great, who is currently a producer of said content right here on this channel. You could be too, and you could have my I'd be eternally grateful. Let's be perfectly honest. So yeah, with that said, I'm Bran from Bloody Breakdown. It is now your turn. Let me know in the comment section down below, how do you rank the Saw franchise, especially if you've already seen Spiral, because I want to see where those additions, where that new addition lands. So like I said, I'm Bran from Bloody Breakdown. We'll catch you all next time.